Good evening, and thank you for watching. Tonight I'm going to talk about something I've done pretty much over the last 6 years now, since the very end of 2018. And that, of course, is driving for Rideshare via Lyft or Uber. Funny enough, there's a Lyft sticker hanging like right above me. But there were periods during this time where I've done it as a full-time job, and there were also periods during that time where I was working a full-time job at another place, a pizza place to be exact, and I would do it on the side just to make a little extra. But before I dive into that, I'm going to give everyone a quick update of what's been going on in my life since. Now, if you've seen my last installment about the depression I've been dealing with, and well, I'm still dealing with it, but I have a feeling that there's light at the end of the tunnel. But one of the things I mentioned was that I was going through truck driving school so I could get my Class A CDL. Well, needless to say, I actually have completed it since, and I do have my Class A CDL now. And last week, I actually almost did get hired on at a reputable trucking company. I know I say I almost did, but it's not over yet. I mean, it's not fully off the table. But one of the things DOT and the FMCSA requires is a full check of your medical records, and while doing so, they pulled my psych records, and one of the things that was mentioned in it is that I have a problem with heavy drinking. So because of that, I was seen as a risk to get behind the wheel of a CMV like that. And so now I gotta come up with paperwork from a SAP, which I plan to do this week. A SAP, or Substance Abuse Program. But yeah, I was actually in Dallas for about maybe a week. And I was like this close to getting put onto the truck with a trainer, and I'd have had to have traveled for 240 hours behind the wheel. Then I would have had a week of home time, and after that I would be on my own truck. But that's the FMCSA for you, or Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration for you. But it's not over yet. I still plan to go after that, but in the meantime, I got my CDL. But other than that, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. And that, of course, is my experiences as well as some pet peeves that I have from doing this, from being a rideshare driver for the last 6 years. Now, I want to disclose this first and foremost before I dive into it. I'll even reiterate it towards the end. But not every ride that I have taken is like this. No. In fact, I'm actually going to be speaking on like a small percentage. Like, we're talking like maybe way less than a quarter. Because, you know, for the most part, most of the rides I've taken, it would be passengers that would either be listening to their headsets, or they'd be on their phone, or in their own little world, or they just want to be quiet and go for the ride. Alright, cool. And I've even had some where I've had decent conversations with. Okay, once again, cool. That's the most part. But I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about that very small percentage that is the exact opposite of that. Now, of course, when you think of rideshare, Lyft, and Uber, you're probably thinking, hey, it's easy work. I mean, you set your own schedule, you make your own hours, you work as you want, as long as you want, whenever you want. Why the hell are you about to complain about it? Well, I guess passengers have done things that have annoyed me personally, and we're going to get right into that. I think I'm going to start off by talking about what I like to call, and I didn't come up with this myself, another rideshare channel came up with this, but I'm going to call it the backseat GPS. Okay, now, the way things are set up, I mean, I have my phone mounted on a little clip where I can see the GPS on it, and I'm pretty sure the passenger can see the GPS. As a matter of fact, the GPS actually interrupts my music to tell me which ways to turn. But yet, even with all that in place, I still get those passengers that feel the need to give me turn-by-turn directions and tell me which ways to turn. Now, don't get me wrong on this one, because I do get, from time to time, I will get the ones that'll say, I know the GPS is going to tell you to do this, that, and the third while standing on your head, but if you just go straight and make a left, it'll be much easier. Okay, those are the ones that are actually fine, and that I actually appreciate. But my thing is this. If the GPS interrupts the music and tells me, in 500 feet, turn right on Perkins Road, I do not want to hear the words, you're going to turn right there on Perkins Road, come out of the passenger's mouth. Now, am I going to wear my emotions on my sleeve and let it be shown? No, because if it's one thing I did learn in the beginning of this industry, don't use your emotions. Use your ratings and... Hey, kitty! Oh. Yeah, this little kitty just walked out of nowhere. Don't worry, I keep a food bowl as well as a water bowl up ahead underneath that bench right there. Yeah, I like to feed the neighborhood cats. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah. As it was explained in the beginning, don't use your emotions, use your ratings instead. So, I do just that. I mean, if they want to sit in the back seat and give me unnecessary turn-by-turn directions, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm just going to go ahead and let them do their little thing there and give me those unnecessary directions, and once I drop them off, I give them the appropriate rating. Although I'll admit there was one time I can think of where a passenger actually did do that. Like, she sat in the back seat and gave me turn-by-turn directions, and the directions she gave me were no different at all than the directions my GPS was already giving me. And when we finally got to where I was dropping her off, thank God this is over, I just went ahead and said, oh, and by the way, thank you so much for those turn-by-turn directions, because seriously, if you had not have been doing that, I don't know how we would have gotten here. And she was like, oh yeah, no problem. Anything to help my drivers. Yeah, she was also apparently too stupid to see sarcasm. So I went ahead and gave her the appropriate rating, as I said I would. And I think another one I want to touch on are the what's your name passengers. Okay, here's the thing. When you request a ride, it tells you in the app. I know this because I have utilized this service before for my own self. But it tells you in the app. It tells you the driver's name, what type of vehicle they're driving, and the license plate. And even with that, I mean, there have been times where I've gotten these passengers that would actually, and it's usually the female passengers who do this too. But yeah, they'll look at their phone, they'll see the license plate on it, and they'll walk behind my car, look at the license plate on it, and see that it matches up. They'll open the back door, and before they get in, what do they say? What is your name? Okay, I have a problem with that. What is your name? To me, I mean, I get that the passenger wants to be safe and know that she's getting into the right Uber and all. I don't discount that for a second. But to me, opening the door and asking the driver, what is your name? To me, that's as appealing as calling somebody, and when the person who answers the phone and says hello picks up, that's like asking that person, who is this? No. You called me. Who is this? But I've actually kind of worked up a fair compromise with this one. Now, usually when they open my door and say, "What is your name?" I'll respond with, "Who are you expecting?" And it's at that point, you look at your phone and it'll show you the driver's name. So when they say, "What's your name?" I say, "Who are you expecting?" And if they say it again, "What is your name?" I'll be like, "No, no, 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 no. Under no circumstances of any kind do I give my name out right out the gate. So why don't you just look at your phone, tell me the name you see, and if it's my name, I'll tell you that it's me, and I will look at my phone and tell you, are you so-and-so?" So that way, so you don't have to ask me what my name is, and I don't have to ask you what your name is. Why don't we tell each other what our names are? I think that's pretty fair. And this next one I'm going to mention, it's kind of a pet peeve one. Now, in the back seat of my car, well, this really hasn't been a problem since I've put down some new seat covers that's made it impossible. But I mean, in the middle, there's that thing, you can actually fold down that has a cold drink holder or an armrest, whatever. Every so often, I'll get a passenger that'll actually fold it down, whether it be to use as an armrest or to hold their cold drink, whatever, I don't care. If you feel the need to do that, alright, whatever. My only thing about it is, whenever I drop you off, put it back up, okay? Don't just leave it down there and expect me to put it back up. That's one of the things that'll give you the proper rating. Because I actually did time it. I actually broke out the stopwatch on my phone and timed how long it would take me to do it. Between having to come to a complete stop, shift into park, undo my seatbelt, get out, open the back door, and put it back up. It took about 13 seconds. And yeah, some of you watching might think, is it really going to kill you to spend 13 seconds to put it back up? Are you really that lazy? I'll be the first to admit it. Yes, to an extent, I am lazy. I'm not even going to lie about it. But at the same time, the thing is this. As far as putting it back up or putting it down, it only takes 1 second. I mean, it's easy. You spent 1 second pulling it down. You can spend 1 second putting it back up. Don't make me have to stop and do it. Because the next passenger I pick up, they're not going to do it. Nor do I expect them to do it. So yeah, let's be a little considerate when it comes to stuff like that. Oh, and how's this for being lazy? About maybe 4 years or so ago, I think the year was 2020. Might have been 2019, I don't know. It was sometime around that time, but I actually picked up this group that involved that was like 4 girls that I had picked up at LSU's campus. And well, because of the amount of people in the car, I mean, there were 3 in the back seat and 1 sitting in the jump seat up front. And this is one where I can say I actually cussed them out. But yeah, I picked them up from where I was picking them up to, and during the course of the ride, it started raining. And whenever I got to where I dropped them off, they all got out of the car, and let me tell you, not one of them closed the door. Like, all 3 doors, both back doors, and the jump seat door was left wide open, and it's raining. They just piled out of the car and just ran towards the house. I actually got out of the car and said, "You stupid bitches really couldn't have closed the damn door? Like, what the fuck?" So I'm having to walk all the way around my car and close the door. Did they downrate me? Most likely. I don't care. I downrated them too. And if there's been any talk in the rideshare community about passengers canceling the ride mid-trip so they can get a free ride, Well, in the whole 6 years I've been doing this, I've only had one do that to me. Because I was on the other side of the river in Port Allen sometime last year, actually. But yeah, I mean, I picked this woman up from some smoke shop, and the destination was to a set of motels that were like right down there by the interstate, where they had like 2 truck stops. There was an old school truck stop, and there was a Love's truck stop, but it was also surrounded by some flea bag motels. Well, her destination was set to go to one of those motels. But anyway, whenever she got in, I could tell something was off about her. Like, she was asking me so many questions, which I'm able to identify as a junkie behavior. Like, I don't remember what any of her questions were, but I'll just go ahead and say her first question was, "How are you doing?" And as I was answering, she done asked me like 4 or 5 different other questions about other things, only to say, "Oh, you're not a very talkative one. I understand." And in the back of my mind, I'm kind of reflecting on, have y'all seen my fundraising for law enforcement video? The one where I called somebody and she started frog diving me with all these questions, and I just said, "Hey, excuse me. I don't mind assisting you with any of your questions, comments, concerns, or inquiries, but if I may, though, I would like to do this by way of one question at a time." That's what I was thinking in the back of my mind when she was doing this. I'm like, let's do this one question at a time. Anyway, we're going down Lobdell Highway. We're like almost halfway to her destination, and the ride just disappears off the screen, which tells me she canceled it. So I went ahead and pulled over on the side of Lobdell Highway, and I'm like, "Alright, you're going to either have to reorder the ride or you're just going to have to get out because I can't take you any further." And she's like, "No, what are you talking about? You're taking me to the Yo-Yo." And I'm like, "Correction. I was, but you canceled the ride, and the moment you done that, you became a stranger in my car. So at this point, something's going to have to happen because I ain't taking you any further." And then she actually got out. I was actually ready for her to be combative with me, but she grabbed her bags, opened the door, and she's like, "You're a horrible Uber driver. I bet you get a lot of good tips." Actually, yes, I do. And I told her that. I'm like, "I do actually, just from the ones who don't cancel the ride of mid-trip." But yeah, that was the end of that one. And that was the only time somebody has ever canceled on me a mid-trip. And let's talk about identifying potential problem passengers before they even get into the car. That was one thing I was actually able to pick up on, and we'll talk about the first one that I remember. At some point in 2019, I was somewhere near LSU's campus, and well, he had 2 conflicting locations. I mean, his signal was coming from that road. I can't think of the name of the road offhand, but it's not too far from Chimes on Highland Road. That's where his signal was coming from, but the pickup point was coming from Chimes on Highland Road. So, I pull up over there, I start the timer, I'm waiting for him, and then the phone rings. I answer, and he's like, "Where are you?" "I am right here off of the side of..." "Huh?" "I'm right here off of the side of this road where..." "What?" Like, dude, let me talk. "I'm right here where you're..." He's like, "Hurry up," and hangs up on me, and I'm like, oh, hell no. I am not giving this dude a ride. So I just went ahead and canceled the ride and proceeded out of that road, and when I got to Highland, I saw him, but I already canceled on him. And he's like just flagging me down, and I went ahead and made that right turn onto Highland from that road, and as I'm just like, cheers. Just kept going. But as I'm going down there, the speed limit, this road runs through LSU's campus, so the speed limit was 25 miles an hour. So, that's what I'm actually doing. And I look in my mirror. He's actually chasing after me. And just to be exact of what I saw while he was chasing after me, for those of you who grew up during the good times and have seen the second Terminator movie, you remember that scene where they actually escaped from the mental hospital and T-1000 was chasing after that car on foot? That's kind of what he looked like. But I ended up getting away from him, and he got so mad, he actually threw his phone at me. Well, his phone didn't hit my car, it actually hit the street. But yeah, that's pretty much what it was with him. But now, as far as turning down rides before I even have a chance to get them, some of y'all might actually say this is going to be pretty petty. But there were times where I would respond. I can think of a couple of these, as a matter of fact, where I was responding to a ride and I was on my way to go pick them up. Well, they would text me through the app. Now, the way Lyft is set up, if it can detect that the vehicle is in motion, it's not going to allow you to text or respond back or nothing. Like, I have to be at a complete stop. It could be at a red light. It could be at a stop sign. I could pull over. Whatever. But if it detects that the vehicle's in motion, it's not going to allow me to respond. But anyway, there's a couple instances where I was on my way to pick somebody up, and they would send me a text saying, Are you coming to get me? Or are you coming to pick me up? And I couldn't respond for the reasons I mentioned. But as soon as they respond back with, hello, okay, once I've seen that, hello, okay, just for that, no, I'm not. And I would go ahead and cancel the ride right there. Like I said, some of y'all may see this as petty, but here's the thing. Instead of looking at me like I'm crazy for doing that, we need to take a look at my ex that I had back in between 2014 and 2016. You can thank her because I actually have PTSD off of that. Because she was the kind that she knew my work schedule. She knew when I'd be the most busiest. She knew when I'd be the least busiest, where I could talk to her via text. But it never failed. She would always try to message me while I'm busy as hell. And would just break off into this hello nonsense. And then turn around and start flashing out at me via text because I did not respond as quickly as she texted. So yeah, you can thank her. I got PTSD off of that. So yeah, that right there. Because of that, I ended up not picking up him and somebody else who did that. You know what? I'm also going to go ahead and mention the one time I can think of that I actually went off on a would-be passenger. This happened sometime in late 2019. But I got this request, and for those of you who live in the Baton Rouge metro area, you know what I'm talking about. You know how far I had to go. But I was somewhere around Millerville and I-12. I got this ping to pick somebody up in some apartments in Denham Springs, like right there along Florida Boulevard, right there where Jubin Road ends. If you're from the area, you know how far I had to go. So, I get down there, I pull up to the apartment complex, and it's a gated community. I'll touch on those in a minute. So, I called the passenger so I could obtain the gate code to get inside. She gave me the gate code, but at the same time, she was arguing with her old man. I heard her talking about used condoms and all this other stuff. So that right there should have been a red flag. So, I went ahead and picked her up, and she gets into my car. I opened up the trunk, and I put her 2 suitcases in there. She gets in the back seat. I get back in the driver's seat, and I didn't even get outside the complex till she said, "Can I be honest with you? I really don't need this ride. Can you just bring me back?" So I went ahead and told her, "Can I be honest with you? I'm mad now." And she's like, "Why?" "I came a long way to come and get you. And for you to not need this ride, once I drop you back off, or even if I drop you off right here, in fact, this is where I'm dropping you off, is right here. I ain't bringing you back to your gate. You can just tote those luggages back up, because either way it goes, I'm not going to get paid for this." "Yeah, because the way the algorithm is set up, I'm just simply not going to get paid for it." And I said, "The time it took me to come down here and get you, that is time I could have been making some real money, giving a ride to somebody who really and truly needed the service. But no, I couldn't, because you want to mamby-pamby and play games with the system like this, to where somebody like me is going to be losing out. So you're going to lose out too. That's why you're going to carry those bags back to your apartment." So, I went ahead and stopped the car right there, opened the trunk, pulled her luggages out, and told her to get walking. And whenever I ended the ride, sure enough, as I said, I didn't get paid for it. In fact, the algorithm thinks I canceled the ride, as I knew it would. Oh, and you know what? Here's another ridiculous one for you. Actually, there's probably a lot of ridiculous ones, but at some point last year, I picked up these two girls that were hanging out by some club on North Street. I think they were pranking me. In fact, I'll get into that here in just a sec. But they requested a ride going from there, going to some other club off of North Acadian and Choctaw. Now, mind you, while they were riding in the back seat, they were eating chips as loud as hell, like they're some type of wild animal or something. And one of them actually asked me, "Do you feel like you're being pranked right now?" And I just went ahead, even though it was a short ride, it was still pretty miserable. But I just went ahead and said, "Maybe, but let's think about it. Who is the one paying, and who's the one getting paid? I mean, if this is your way of pranking me, maybe you should ask yourself, who's pranking who?" Well, we finally get to that other club over there off of North Acadian, and she was like, "Can you bring us back to where you picked us up?" Just when I thought it was almost over. Whatever. So I went ahead and bought them back to where I picked them up. And I mean, it was only 5 minutes away in one way. So that was a pretty long 10 minutes that I had to endure. But right whenever I got back to that club where I had picked them up originally on North Street, they got out of the car. I was just about to drive off, but I look in my passenger side rearview mirror, and I see one of them is still holding on to the door handle. And I'm ready to drive off and get the hell out of there. And I've already given them the appropriate rating at that time, too. So I went ahead and hit the lock so I could lock the door, in case they had any crazy ideas of wanting to come inside. And I rolled down the back window just enough to where she could hear me, because she was still holding on to the door handle. And I said, "Let go of the door!" And I couldn't really understand what she said, and I'm like, "I'm about to drive off. In about 5 seconds, I'm driving off, whether you're holding on to the door or not. So you can let go of the door now, or I'm going to drive off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And right when I got to 1, that's when she let go of the door, and I drove off like I said I would. But yeah, like I said, if this was her way of pranking me, once again, they had to pay for this prank, and I'm the one who got paid. So who's really pranking who at this point? But yeah, kind of touching back on the previous scenario with the apartment complex and the gated communities, I'll go ahead and touch on that. I mean, And you know, there's probably been like less than a handful of times that this has happened anyway. Just like every other scenario I'm talking about. But here's the thing. If you live in a gated community, or if you're at a gated community, and you just requested a ride in a Lyft or an Uber, here's the thing. Text me with the gate code. Don't call me. Because if I'm on my way over there and you call me and tell me what the gate code is, I'm not going to remember it. And I'm just going to tell you, yeah, go ahead and text me with it because I won't remember it. And if I pull up at a gated community and you haven't said nothing, you know, I'm going to try to call you like maybe once, maybe twice. And if you don't answer, I'm just going to wait right there by the gate, but in a safe spot if there is one available to where I'm not impeding traffic. And I'm going to start the timer right there. And if you don't show up, that's your problem. Oh, and you know what? That actually brings me to another point, actually. Now, I'm not sure if passengers are aware of this or not, but there have been a few times where I'm not talking about gated communities at this point. I'm actually talking about just regular residential houses or even businesses where I had been dispatched to go pick somebody up. Like whether it's Lyft or Uber, either way, there's a 5-minute timer. Like I would actually show up over there ready to pick them up. And they would not come out until after the last minute. It's almost like they're looking at their phone to see if I canceled the ride and moved on. That's when they come out, because I've had quite a few people actually, especially the crazy one I mentioned earlier, that even though the ride is already timed out and I canceled it and moved on, it's only at that point they want to come out and try to chase me down. I don't know. I mean, I know I've said I've utilized the service before for myself, but I didn't put a driver through this, so I don't know for sure. But it makes me wonder if the app is even telling them that that's dead. Because even though that's dead, I have actually driven off and went about my business, and they would still come out and try to flag me down and chase me down. You know, I can think of another instance like that where I pulled up at a Circle K, somewhere here in Baton Rouge, and the rider was sitting right in front of me, but I didn't know it was him. I thought it might have been some homeless person. But I pulled up in the parking lot, started the timer. It counted all the way down to the last minute. I timed it out. As I'm about to pull off, that's when that dude got up and said, "Hey, are you an Uber driver?" "Yeah, why?" "Okay, yeah, I just ordered the ride here." I'm like, whoa, 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 not so fast. The ride timed out. You're going to have to reorder the ride now. And mind you, it was a third-party ride. Ugh, I fucking hate these third-party rides. I'll get to that, too. But I said, well, you're going to have to contact your boy or whatever and tell him to reorder the ride because this one just timed out. And about these third-party rides, okay, here's my thing about them. I know I said I hate these rides. Now, if you're ordering this ride on behalf of somebody else, I get it. Life is rough. Sometimes you have to do that. My thing is, let's make sure that there's some type of communication going on. Because I've actually lost count of how many times I've actually pulled up to a third-party ride not knowing it was a third-party ride, and the person who ordered the ride did not communicate with me or the rider. I mean, if you're ordering this ride on behalf of somebody else, make sure you let that person know what type of vehicle they're going to be driving, and let them know when they pulled up. Don't just say, "I'm going to order the ride for you," and that's a wrap. Because we don't know it's them, and they don't know it's us. So yeah, let's utilize communication when we order these third-party rides, shall we? You know, here's another good one for you. Passengers who request the ride, but they put their request in reverse order. By reverse order, I mean, okay, they'll request the ride, and you know what? It's probably an honest mistake. I get it. Nobody's perfect. But make sure you double check your work before you submit the request. Because there were some times where I'm responding to a ride and I pull up at the location that the app tells me to pull up. And then the passenger calls me and says, or even sometimes I call them and say, hey, can you see me anywhere? Whatever. They'll be like, well, where are you at? I'm at such and such address. What do they say next? That's the drop-off location. You were supposed to pull up to such and such, which is the pickup location. Like they're making it seem like it's my fault, like I showed up at the wrong place because I wasn't paying attention. There's some things wrong with that. Now, if it's the Lyft app will show me both the drop-off and pickup location, but at the same time, it's going to take me to the location that the requester put in, okay? So no fault on my end on that one. And as for the Uber app, and it actually happens more on the Uber app than it does on the Lyft app, believe it or not. The way Uber is set up, whenever I show up to the pickup location, I have no way of knowing where the drop-off location is until I actually start the ride after the passenger gets in. So once again, no fault on my end. So yeah, whenever they tell me things like, you showed up at the drop-off location, you need to come to the pickup location, I go ahead and tell them, well, that depends on a few things. In the first place, how far apart are both locations? Now, if the original location that they really needed is like less than 5 minutes away, I'll go ahead and bite that, and I'll show up at the pickup location and pick them up from there, and then whatever, I'll take them where I initially showed up. Now, it's another thing if they're like across town. Like, let's say that I'm on one side of town. Let's say that I'm down by South Baton Rouge. And the person is like all the way in Baker. In a case like that, I'm going to say, you're going to have to cancel the ride and reorder it. Because, no, I am not going to go all the way out there and bring you all the way back where I initially showed up. Because at that point, I'm burning twice as much gas. I'm actually spending more than I'm profiting on that one. But yeah, let's double check our work before we submit the app. And then, so that way you don't have to say that the job I did was horrible when it was really your fault because you did not check your work. This also reminds me of another one because there were some times where I would pick somebody up and the drop-off location they had was not the right location. And they would actually give me an address. They'll say, can you take me to 123 Perkins Road? And I will put it into the app and recalibrate it as 123 Perkins Road, and I would even verbally call it back. So you need 123 Perkins Road, right? Yeah. And I would show up at 123 Perkins Road, and they'll say, this isn't the right place. What address did you put in? Okay, when they do that, I will open it back up, and this is what I would say. I would say it just like this. You gave me 123 Perkins Road. No, I needed 321 Perkins Road. Ugh. So I'll put in 321 Perkins Road and drop them off, then give them a bad rating, because I'm pretty sure they're going to give me a bad rating too for taking them to the wrong place, when, once again, they gave me that information, because like I said, I verbally called it back to them before taking them there. Well, what do you know? This takes me to another point. Something else that'll give you the appropriate rating for me, and that, of course, is blaming. Okay, if a passenger blames me for anything at all, you are automatically getting bad rated, even if it is my fault. And I know what a lot of y'all are thinking now. Y'all are probably thinking, well, if it is your fault, why are you going to downrate them anyway? Okay, because if it is my fault, I'll speak up on it. I will own up to it. Like, for example, let's say that I miss a turn. And it's happened a few times. I'll say, you know what, you're right. I missed that turn. That's my bad. I'm going to turn around. Okay. If it ends right there and they let it go, all right, fine. I'm not going to give them a bad rating at that point. But even after I've done said, that's my bad, I'm going to turn around. Instead of it ending right there, if the other person still continues to go on and on and on about it, to overemphasize and highlight how much I messed up even after I done took ownership of it, yeah, you're going to get a bad rating. For the very same reason why in real life, you know, if somebody has already made their point, I get the point, this and that, and they still continue to lecture me, we got a problem. Well, same thing with that. But most of the time, any time a passenger has blamed me for anything, it would be something to the effect of, here's a good one. I was all the way down in close to South Baton Rouge, real close to LSU's campus, and I had a pickup that was along the north end of Airline Highway. So it took me a good minute to get there. I picked them up. Oh, and needless to say, they took a good while coming out of that house to get into my car. And I took them to Baker, and they were already late for whatever reason. And I overheard one of them say, "Let's blame the Uber driver." Yeah, I'll blame your rating. How about that? And while we're on the subject, I almost kicked somebody out of my car for this one. But at some point last year, I got this request to pick somebody up in Mid-City, and I was actually pretty much in Prairieville, which is like just south of Baton Rouge, kind of into Ascension Parish. Well, I got a ping to pick him up while I was dropping off one passenger already. And whenever I finally showed up at his place to pick me up, he had the audacity to ask me, "What took you so long?" Bro, if you were watching your app, you would have seen I was all the way down in Prairieville. That in itself should have answered your question. Now, it would be one thing if I was just piddling around, but that was not the case at all. And as for why I almost kicked him out, I mean, he wanted me to take him somewhere else that was in Mid-City too, which is a known drug area, most likely to get his fix. So, I pulled up right in front of the house, which was probably the trap house. He goes in there, does his thing, comes back out. And as I'm bringing him, and it was a round trip ride too, as I'm bringing him back where I picked him up, he had the nerve to ask me, "Do you mind if I smoke in here?" And my response was, "I'd rather you didn't." What does he say next? "Do you mind if I smoke here?" Once again, "I'd rather you didn't." It's like, damn, I said I'd rather you didn't. Do I really have to say, hell no, you can't smoke in here? But then I also said, okay, let's suppose I said yes to this. What are we talking about smoking? Because I have a response for it, whatever it is. And he was like, "Weed?" And I'm like, let's say that I allowed you to smoke it. And let me just kind of disclose this. I have nothing against smoking weed. I can't smoke it myself because in the first place, I have a CDL to protect now. And secondly, this was like right after I got my TWIC card. And I was trying to get in at the plant too, so I definitely had to keep my system clean for that reason. But once he said smoking weed, I was like, okay, let's suppose that I allow you to smoke that in here. And then I drop you off at your location. I pick up my next passenger and the smell of weed lingers in here. What do you think they're going to think? Are they going to think, wow, he must be a cool Uber driver. He lets his passengers smoke in here. Or are they going to automatically assume it must be me doing that, and then they're going to report it to the platform, meaning I could be deactivated, and now I'm going to have to fight to get back on. No, you're not smoking that in here. He didn't say nothing else after that. Should he have, I would have let him out. But if it's one of the things I have determined from being a rideshare driver in Baton Rouge over the last 6 years, I'll say the biggest challenge I had were those stupid drunk kids that I've picked up in Tigerland. And for those of you who are not from around here, Baton Rouge is LSU town, and a lot of the LSU students go over there on party nights and get wasted. And here's where it becomes super challenging for me. As you can tell by the flag I have hanging, I'm actually a Bama fan, and we're actually hated down here. So I've determined that I do try to stay away from there as much as possible on those party nights. But if I do find myself picking up down there, I found I got to keep that shit to myself, because those kids do get in their feelings behind it. In fact, when I first started doing this, I actually had one, when I dropped him off at his dorm room, he one-starred me right in front of me. He was like, hey, fuck Alabama, and he hit the button to give me 1 star. All good. I gave him one right back. But yeah, of all the areas I've picked up at in the Baton Rouge area, I have to say that, Tigerland has to be, if not the worst. Actually, yeah, it is the worst, because that's where I've had the most trouble from. Because these young college kids can't handle their liquor. And for those of you who are watching that are from the Baton Rouge area and who have picked up over there, you know what it is. But I think I'm going to go ahead and conclude the rant on that note. But as I stated in the beginning, once again, not every ride that I have taken is like this. Everything I've spoke of and mentioned is not even like this. It's like a very small percentage. Because if every ride I've taken was like this, I would have quit doing this a long time ago. But no, the way it is now that I have my CDL and I'm trying to get in on the trucking company, and came so close to it. But that's also one battle I'm not about to give up yet. But in the meantime, I'm now back to doing this as a full-time job, because that way I can at least keep my busy schedule as cleared as possible while still making money. It's kind of hard to do that when you're working an actual job. Well, I'm not going to say this isn't an actual job, but you know what I mean, a job that requires being tied to a schedule. But yeah, that's what it's going to be for the time being. Other than that, thank you for watching, and God bless. And to all my rideshare brethren out there, y'all be safe out there. Cut.